Coming off the Great War, where there was a lot of political, social, and economic change, including the issues over labor and women's rights, these issues were resolved by labor unions and the 19th Amendment that gave women their suffrage. The 1920s was a peaceful and prosperous time, socially, politically, and economically, because there wasn't really any things to change because everything happened in the Great War.
The 20s were all about having a good time. Two inventions that caused major social changes were the radio and automobile. People who affected society were major sport heroes like Babe Ruth, new thinkers like Sigmund Freud, and young American soldiers. This exciting time was a feeling of freedom, especially for the young American soldiers back from the war. They came back after seeing a new world, wanting to change the tradition of their parents. Women wore dresses that showed more of their bodies and started to drink and smoke with men in public. New dances became the in thing, like the foxtrot and the Charleston, where they danced close instead of more far apart like they used to. The most important social change was the economic growth. People had extra money to spend on things other than food, housing, and basic needs.
For economical changes, coming off of social, there was a larger middle class where people lived in suburbs. They had more times for leisure, and such as the washing machine, which they used to speed up the process of just getting around and living. From the beginning, the economy in the 1920s coming out of World War I was prosperous and led the U.S. to emerge as the strongest economic power in the world. America went from a debtor to a creditor, with European governments owing the U.S. about $10 million. Americans insisted that Europeans should pay some of their debt, creating anti-American feelings in Europe and isolationism beliefs in America. Dawes' plan also arranged for American bankers to lend funds to Germany to help stabilize. In America, there was a consumer industry boom, and with mass production in effect to make large profit while keeping prices affordable for everyday Americans. Workers had the good pay, hours, and workplaces that they urged for during the war, leaving them satisfied. Consumerism was also put into advertising, where ads focused on the ideas of the consumer rather than the actual product, as well as convincing the buyer that it would benefit their well-being.
Communism was a big scary thing to America, and towards the early 20s, more than the late. It was so scary that the U.S. Department of Justice started the Palmer raids. The Red Scare drove the department to do this to rid the country of the Reds. The New York Times reported that 650 people were arrested. That's not a lot, but America was pretty scared of the commies. Overseas in Paris, the League of Nations met. President Wilson formally called the council, and it was to be the last official participation by the U.S. in the entire history of the League of Nations. The 18th Amendment went into effect. Prohibition. These guys were dumping alcohol down the sewers. It was later repealed. The American Socialist Party nominated Eugene V. Debs for president. He never got there. Woodrow Wilson was elected the 28th president. He served from 1913 to 1921. Then it was Warren G. Harding. Warren G. Harding served from 1921 to 1923. Then Calvin Coolidge came along. He served from 1923 to 1929. Then, in the election of 1929, Herbert Hoover was elected. This was towards the end of the 20s, and he served his term until 1933. To wrap things up, although the time was generally peaceful, the nation had to face some challenges, including some unforeseen ones. Political tension with the commies and the rest of Europe, including Germany, would later start World War II. The Great Depression would come up after tons of spending and not caring about tomorrow in the 20s. And the